You should go.
Okay, going to call to order the Master Facilities Plan Oversight Committee meeting for July 13th, 2020, 3:30 p.m. Everybody should have had an agenda and emailed to them. First things first, I need an approval of the June 1st, 2020 meeting minutes. Do you have a motion?
Make a motion.
Anybody out there? Got a motion? I need a second.
Second.
Second by Lindsay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion, all those against, same sign. I guess I will correct that with the meeting minutes. There was the corrections by Lindsay in there, and those were duly noted. Is that acceptable to you, Lindsay?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, motion carries then. First up, we got Dave Nicholson on the financial report. Dave, go ahead. You're up.
All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's go start with, you want me to open it up and share my screen? Would that be probably best?
Well, I'm on the phone myself. I got my computer in front of me. I got my iPad in front of me here. I'm looking at whatever you're. Just give me a page wherever you're going to, and I'll follow along on that.
All right. So I
wouldn't mind you having it on your screen.
Okay. Let me grab it here real quick. Just had it open here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Hi. Sorry, I'm having internet issues with my work internet, so I had to call in, so I can't do camera.
Share my screen. Okay, can everybody see the agenda?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect.
I got it.
All right, we're gonna go to the financial report. All right, I'm gonna see if I can zoom in a little bit. It doesn't look like I can. Well, so first off, well, hopefully you guys can read this. If not, you guys got the packet too. But for the save, first off, I want to point out this is the time of year when June. We don't really get June closed out until like end of August, first part of September is when we officially close out in June. So we're in the limbo months right now. So the only close that we have of anything really is May. So this report is showing save with May, where we were in May. So we can see here that we've actually have brought in total revenue through May at 17,642,000, and we have budgeted 20,000,300. I can't actually. Does that say 805? There it goes. 805. Perfect. There it came up. 805. And so we're at about 84% of revenue. And if you look at prior years, our revenue, it's about. I thought I looked at this number. It's about the same at this point in time. Current year to date, prior year to date. It's about 85% of the state revenue in the 84%. And we're in the same range here for our revenues. I think what's really big about in this year is the prior year, we actually had a lot of save revenue bonds that came in the prior year. That's why it's kind of throwing things off. We actually received our $25 million in save revenue in the prior year. So, and expenditures as of right now, we're at 42 million. I think we talked about this last time too. The 42 million is representing, we actually had to pay off bonds because we refinanced bonds. That's why that's such a big number. Otherwise it'd be more in line with our revenue. So then I'm going to go on to here. This is our save. The breakout by project, by building. This is has all the data from FY17 through FY20 as of FY 6/30, but it's not final. We did pull everything in that as we had at that time, but it's not final. These numbers are going to change before we get done with June. So I'm just going to go down here in FY20. You can see where we have spent 22,309,000, and we had budget 26 million. And these numbers will probably, like I said, change before we get done in the overall expenses. The budgets should be set, so that shouldn't change, but the expenditures will. And the rest of the data here is just for reference for the prior years. These numbers will not change. And the reason why we still have some of these years out there, some of these projects were still active. Once they become active, we'll have a conversation about pulling out potentially FY16, 17 for the following year. If everything is totally complete, we'll pull that out from the report. Any questions on the save before I move forward? All right, we'll go on to PEPL. PEPL, this too is as of May 31st, 2020. This is not it's not mixed up with because we had bonds issued. So our revenues are matching, a little bit more expenses at this point in time as of May. And our revenue is pretty close to our budgeted revenue. We do have some property taxes yet outstanding, and which is pretty close to what it was last year. We're at 99 and they're at 98%. And so we're pretty close there. And so there's, things kind of fall in line here with PEPL. So now this is going to look a little bit different than last time. This is the total PEPL. And I'll point out a couple of things as we get down through here. But this is, broken out by project, by description, as of 6/30. Once again, this is not final. But we did take the liberty, or Sarah did, took the liberty to change the budget amounts to reflect the inflationary numbers. Okay. So our budgets now reflect inflationary numbers. If you remember last month, we had this note saying what it was, what the original budget was. To kind of clarify and not muddy things up, because if we would continue to put what the original PEPL promise amount was and the inflationary budget amount, there's a lot of data here, and it could you can miss some other notes if you're looking for other notes for different reasons. So that's why we decided to increase all the budget amounts to reflect the inflationary numbers. And so that way it will be more in tune with our expenses are going forward. So as you go down through here, you can see all the different types of projects, and you can see multiple years. Like I said, this is as a project number. It's pulling everything by project for the multiple years here. And once we actually get into once we set the budget for FY PEPL Promise projects for year 7, 21, 22, once we know what those projects are and it's been approved by the committee, Sarah will go ahead and add those to this report. This report then will be reflective of all the 2020 budget amounts in here. And as soon as we know what those are, so if the expenses happen, there will be a budget amount in there to absorb those expenses. And so in the past, we left that alone until we got into that fiscal year. Now we're just going to go ahead and add them once we know what those amounts are. We'll add them into the budget, and so then it will be reflective of that. And so then you'll see in total in that project, the budget numbers will be there for the entire project. Let me see. Let me get what page of the notes on my paper copy here. 1 second. Oh, I do want to go back 1 second. I'm going to go back to, I missed one of my comments in the save. I want to go back to save 1 second. I'm sorry, I missed something here on the first page. Where's Coolidge and Jackson. Right here, this note. Last month, we actually had the budget was set up for the entire, what expenditures was set up were much higher. It almost showed 20 some $million in expenses last year. What happens at the end of the year, initially we run these reports with encumbrances. So anything that has a PO outstanding against it, these reports are reflective of that. So in the past month, we actually had the full purchase order for the construction of Coolidge. And so that showed the total expenditures being that amount. But when you get to June, we have to roll those POs forward. So now that actually eliminated the PO outstanding in FY20. And so that number dropped down to what actual was expenses, not showing what was the encumbrance against that line item. So that changes at this time of year, and that's how our system works. So I did want to make that aware. If you happened to look last month, say, wait a second, why did our expenses drop down so much? Well, it's because of encumbrances. In all previous months, we include encumbrances, but in this final month, it does not incorporate encumbrances in that number. That's how our system works. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll get back to the PEPL promise. So like I said, we have we moved the notes, we rolled that into our total budget amount. And then we get down here by project, you can see all the different projects. And so in total, for all the years that we have here in the PEPL promise, we have, this doesn't go back all the way through the end of PEPL, start of PEPL promise, but as of right now, we had 17,408,000 and our expenditures of 7.8 million. So that's kind of where we are today in PEPL. Any questions?
Yeah, Dave,
Yeah.
since you've increased those budgets to reflect the inflation, the project has a total of what you expect to have money income for all the years.
Yeah.
How does that compare to the budget, that the total budget that's that you have now?
We have not, to be honest, David, we have not actually applied those numbers to the full plan and ran those numbers yet. But I can, because we know there are a lot of things that are getting deferred and continue to get deferred because of the master facility plan. So we could try to do that and try to run those numbers, but a lot of those expenditures probably wouldn't happen for some of the buildings that are on the slate to be repurposed.
Okay, I understand. If you don't have enough information yet, then to really know how much you're going to spend, because you don't know what projects you're going to be throwing out.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, well then the information isn't. I don't see a big need for that information, because until you start clicking things off, or or somebody's best guess or something to come up with some kind of an idea where your budget, then that'll also help tell you where you are in the total, so that as changes come up, it'll be easier to just say what do we have the money to do something.
Right.
Yes.
We actually have John's going to be taking care of when he pulls the PEPL promise projects for 21-22. He will those numbers will be inflated, based on the inflationary numbers. So then we'll have a truer picture at that point in time when we're looking at what projects we are doing. But one of the projects, John, I'm not sure if you're planning on mentioning this at this point in time or another part of the agenda, but about us looking at using some PEPL dollars for some lighting for our ball fields?
Yeah, we can talk about that now. So I'll try to make this short and sweet and to the point. Both the girls and the boys associations put out a kind of a reminder to all the districts saying, hey, if you're going to upgrade your LED lights, make sure you're hitting these light levels. So I had all three ADs probably within an hour of each other send that to me and say, what are our light levels at our baseball and softball fields? I think Jefferson softball was the only field we have in the district that meets the recommended light levels. So we started looking at what it would cost just to replace lamps. If I remember correctly, we were like in the $150,000 range just to replace lamps, re-aim fixtures, get to the light levels we needed. And that would leave, except for Washington baseball, that would leave all wood poles in. And Dave, you probably know, Dave Dvorak, you probably have a lot better idea of when those poles were installed than I do, but they're not in great shape. So I reached out to Musco Lighting to see what it would cost to go to all steel poles and new LED fixtures. Actually, I have the quotes in front of me here. We're $244,000 at Jefferson and $259,000 at Kennedy. The difference there is just the size of the fields. So that gets us new poles, new fixtures, and then a 25-year parts and labor warranty on all of those. So that's the way we elected to go. I think there's a little bit of peace of mind there to put in a product and really not have to touch it for 25 years, which is nice. It has technology in it that Musco will know before any of us do. If there's a light bad, a driver bad, anything bad, it has some smart technology that they're able to have 24-hour monitoring on that tells us, hey, this bulb's out or this driver's bad. So I think that 25-year warranty was a big deal to go that way, in my opinion anyways. So those changes are going to be happening here in the fall once baseball season's over with at at Jefferson and Kennedy this year. And then the others will follow suit down the road.
Any other questions before we go on to the next section? All right. So when we get into the next part here, I actually have Tim Oswald with Piper Sandler here on the line as well. He's the consultant we use with when we issue bonds of any sort. We use them as our agent to help us go through all of this, and he's going to hopefully answer any questions that you guys might have with regard. We talked a little bit about this last time, and there were some questions that came up that I was going to have to reach out to Tim to have answered. So I thought, what better is, if we can have Tim, if he is available, be on the call with us, be on the Zoom with us. So Tim is here, and so I kind of going to rehash kind of where we were last year with this document. As you can see, this document is what we kind of reviewed last year. What's in the black is what was there last year. What's in this kind of brownish gold is kind of little added things that we added this time. We didn't change much, but we added a little bit here. So last time we talked about we issued bonds for Coolidge, and we issued $25.185 million for Coolidge. And then at Jackson, we have authority to go up to $25,945, but we only think about $25,750 is truly what our all-in budget is for Jackson. And our yield for Coolidge was 2.33, and at the time, when we issued these, our estimated coverage level was 1.36. And there needs to be, we need to have 1.2% or higher in the revenues, okay, that were generated. And Tim, do you want to, at this point in time, talk about the commitment levels and what is really used to determine those commitment levels? Because It's not necessarily how I have couched it here. It's really based on the revenues, not really looking at our fund balances.
Yeah. So thanks, Dave. So these are bonds, and the pledged if you will, the collateral is the sales tax and nothing else. The holders of these bonds cannot cause the district to use PEPAL dollars or general obligation taxes or general fund dollars to pay the bonds. They're limited in their collateral to just the sales tax. And so typically in that type of a bond, there would be a revenue pledge of some sort. And so Dave's mentioned in this under that word considerations, the number 1.25 or the number 1.20. And in layman's terms, for every dollar that's going out in debt service, there's $1.20 or $1.25 of income coming in from the sales tax. So the first thing to note there is that I said the words for every dollar going out in debt service. I didn't say for every dollar going out. It's just the payments on the bonds are the only part of the calculation. And then those are compared to the revenues from the sales tax itself. Now, there's nothing in the statute that says you have to have some threshold or another. So what we've done over the years is solved for the credit rating that we were shooting to get on the bonds. And so initially back, if you go all the way back to 2010, when the district first sold sales tax revenue bonds, the bonds were rated A by Standard & Poor's, and it had a 1.20 times revenue requirement. And that requirement exists today. So if we had, $1 million a year of income from the sales tax, we could have bond payments that are, if I'm doing the math in my head right, something like $830,000 a year of expenses and meet the 1.20 test. Now, the district does spend money out of the sales tax for other things. Dave, like $3.5 million or so, right?
Yeah, 3.5 to 4. Yep.
Yeah. So we keep that in consideration for the cash flow, but we don't keep. It's not part of the calculation. So when we talk about the 1.2 or the 1.25, that's just the legal limit and not the what do we really need. And what I've said to Dave is, look, if you're deviating much below 1.25 or so, you're probably not going to be able to meet all of your commitments that you want to pay for out of the sales tax anyway. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So so then the question is, well, which is it, 120 or 125? And that's a great question. And the answer is we're stuck with 1.2 right now. But there's nothing that says that we can't change that number either up or down for all future bonds. But we will be bound by the 1.2 until we pay off all the existing bonds. And the existing bonds go through 2029. So we are bound by the 1.2. We started to suggest 1.25 a year and a half or 2 years ago when S&P changed their rating criteria and suggested that coverage ought to be a little higher on these types of issues. So if we had a blank slate, we would probably come in and suggest 1.25, but we're at 1.2 and it's worked fine. And I would note that S&P actually increased the rating on the district between 2010 and 2020, even though we didn't change that coverage calculation. So I wouldn't want the committee to think that we have to go up to 1.25. So then the question becomes, obviously with COVID, what's going on with revenues? And we don't really know. The state does publish its checkbook every day, and there is a place you can go and see statewide revenues. And for year-end 2020, which ended 2 weeks ago, SAVE revenues were actually up over year-end 19 by about 0.25%. However, we think the state was using an assumption of about a 6% growth in FY20, And that was driven by internet sales taxes that were expected, by the way, not organic growth in Iowa, 6%. That'd be a big number for Iowa. So we think the $1,050 or so that the state was trying to pay for FY20 is probably a bit high, and it's probably going to have to come down a little bit. But we will know a lot more in a month. The state will release its estimates on or around August 15, and that'll be for FY21, and then we'll have a pretty good handle on what income we're dealing with in the state's eyes for FY21, and we can from there draw some conclusions about where FY20 actually ended up. But in case anybody, is thinking about it, we're not feeling like we're staring down a 30% reduction in income here. This is Iowa. We grow slow and we decline slow. So we're thinking we're talking about single digit type changes, either up or down. Dave, what else you want to go over?
So with that being said, one of the driving forces that we do have control over, if we do have balances, control our coverage level, is when we're looking at Jackson. Okay, Jackson, we have authority that we got from the board to issue $25.945 million in bonds if we needed to. We could do that, but because we are our fund balance, when we closed out FY19, if you back out the $25 million that we had in debts, save dollar proceeds that we received right at the end of June of last year, we actually closed the books that year over $14 million in the bank and fund balance, excluding the reinjection well money as well. That doesn't, we throw the reinjection well money in there. No, that included reinjection in that number. Take that back. That did include the reinjection number. So we were sitting at about $14 million that we have available. So what we can do, and what we probably will end up doing, we'll probably use some of that fund balance to reduce what we borrow to do the Jackson project, which thus will actually provide us with a bigger cushion on our coverage level, since we won't be issuing as much debt as we if we issue the full $25 million. So that will provide us some buffer there. And Tim, we know what we have here, a strategy if we had to refinance the $56 million. Is something that we could do as well, and we probably will have to do here as we move forward with our plan. Correct?
Yeah, so I think we're likely to have to, if you, depending on how fast you move on building number 3.
Yeah.
I think my goal has been to get Jackson funded without feeling like we have to refinance that issue, so that the board has a little more flexibility to refinance or not if it so desires. But it does seem likely if you get going on buildings 3, 4, 5, we may need to restructure that issue to stay within the 1.2 coverage in a small number of those years.
Okay. And John, when we were talking earlier about the reserve for a reinjection, I'm going to go to this slide here. I've been kind of talking off it myself, but it's hard to see. But we have down here, which you can't really see. It's really blurry, but we have a reserve for reinjection well, and we're at 1.9 million, and it's going to go over 2 million in it was 1.9 in FY19, jumps up to just over 2 million FY20 and 2.1 in FY22. And so when we're and we've been constantly adding an increase to that every year. But John, you believe that the cost to do reinjection wells, if we had to, would be about half that?
Yeah. I believe we're running $300,000 to $350,000 per well, and we just have Franklin and Wilson are the only two schools that do that. So with the piping involved, yeah, I mean, I would, if we were $500,000 per building, I would be pretty surprised on that. But that is something I could reach out to DE to get their input.
Yeah. And that is
John?
Yes.
McKinley doesn't have re-injection either, so it would be 3 schools, wouldn't it?
You could be right on that, Dave. I'll let you say that. I believe you are correct.
Okay.
It's Roosevelt's closed loop,
Yes.
Franklin's re-inject, or Franklin's
Yeah, the other ones are just are production wells. Yeah.
Yep.
The other 3.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So there'd be 3 of them. So yeah, I think roughly half that number. Definitely no more than 3/4 of that number. But yeah, like I said, I can reach out to design engineers and get a budget for that. Just have them review the plans that we have and roughly what do we think this would cost. So that way we're not holding an extra $1 million or an extra $500,000 for that.
Right.
I'd like to make a comment here just on this issue. Years back when I was still there, actually, the state was actually preferring taking water out of the ground. I don't think that they're going to come around and make us re-inject there. I didn't think they were going to back then either, but we were playing it safe, and that was the right thing to do. So taking that money out of there is, I think, a very safe thing to do.
I think if we stop adding anything to it moving forward is the minimum I think we should do. But we could probably, once we get those numbers, we could probably say, okay, whatever that number really be, we can actually take that away and say, this is what we need to have set aside for re-injection wells. But it's not at the level we have today. So that's good news. We can kind of back off that amount. So
I would add to what Dave was saying, that having been there the entire time, I always thought it was an overreaction, an overly cautious point of view. And, I've never been an advocate of having a re-injection reserve because it takes away from other ability to spend capital expenditures in an appropriate manner. So I really think that you should, in the school district, be thinking about, because we now have the penny tax that's extended out so long that I'd be supportive of the city going back, or not the city, the school district going back, and eliminating that reserve. It just sits there and doesn't do anything good for the school buildings, for the students. And I think it's an overly cautious point of view. I agree with every observation Dave has made on it. So I really strongly encourage you to go back. That was at a really uncertain time, and the penny tax was had a sunset provision, and we know so much more now. I think it's a bad action to just continue with the legacy of the past, given how much the needs are for the school district in so many areas to operate the building safely. It's just a significant overreaction that you could, if we were pushed to do it, there's still so much future revenue that we could, eliminate something in the future or defer to be able to, if we were forced to do the re-injection. I just don't support, I never have.
Yeah, Lindsay, also, if push came to shove, we needed to, we could actually do the re-injection wells out of Pepple as well. So it's not something that we have to do out of SAVE if we had to. So
I just think I think it's something that the school district, in our oversight role, I think you need to be challenged to go back and really think that through. I think you're being overly cautious.
So, okay.
Dave, did this originally come from the concern of taking too much water from the aquifer, or was this really driven by that instead of re-injecting it, that they were concerned about the amount of storm runoff? Because right now it just runs into the city storm. Was that more of the concern?
I don't know, John.
No, the concern was that we were taking water. This is what the public was seeing at that time. We're taking water out and just wasting it and throwing it away. And the DNR came. We had a big meeting with DNR and the public and everybody concerned. The DNR had no problems with us doing what we were doing. If the aquifers in Cedar Rapids the amount of water being pulled out of the aquifers in Cedar Rapids is much less than it was in the 1930s, when we had a lot more use for water because of the processing plants and so on. So we have a huge aquifer, and so it was, I think this was kind of an overreaction, but it was because, politics. And I think that those politics have gone by, and especially to go back and redo that. And so that's why we started with doing it at Kennedy. And I'm not saying it's such a bad idea doing re-injection wells on the new things, because they actually are saving us money, because the amount of electricity that's to pump the water out of the ground is being reduced because of the siphoning effect that you get from the reproduction wells. So that's a big positive. But and I think we have to continue to do it. Maybe that's another reason to do it in the first place. So I guess that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I just wanted to check. I know that's one of the big driving factors now is the storm water runoff. The city's very, very concerned about how much water is going into their storm sewers. So that was the big driving factor. I don't think in Cedar Rapids code wise you can do a pump and dump system any longer.
Well, one of the
but also what also was driving it was the fact that the penny tax had a sunset provision, so that we wanted to make sure that we were being responsible, and now we have such a long time frame for that, we could pick it up at a later point in time whenever we're required to do it. So I agree with everything Dave said, plus what I just added.
All right. This spreadsheet, I guess I didn't even catch with this spreadsheet. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this spreadsheet before. This is the spreadsheet where we track, save, and project going forward. And this thing is monstrous spreadsheet. It has several tabs. And so when we're looking at this right now, this spreadsheet goes to 2030 and it will go to 2050. The spreadsheet will, because our extension has gone that far, and our bonds, we will start having bonds that extend past 2030. And so one of the things here I did want to point out, in FY21, I did have listed here of projected issuing of $25 million of bonds, 25.945 million. But knowing that we have a pretty good reserve fund balance, we will draw into that and reduce what we borrow and cash flow some of the Jackson project. And we'll let you know how much we determine what we will end up doing for that. And because that once we get the year closed, we'll know what our true fund balance is of this year, and then we can use those numbers and determine how much of that we can let loose to fund Jackson. So. Does anybody else?
I have a number of observations to make regarding the saved bonds.
Yeah.
First off, Tim, thank you for being on the call. I think you did an excellent job of conveying a very complex topic one point of correction for Dave. When you started the presentation, you referenced 1.2%, and that's really 120% how the coverage works. So just for clarification purposes for the record on that, that couple of observations that I would make, and this is just my opinion, that I think that I'm very uncomfortable with we'll have a lot more certainty with in the next calendar year of truly the impact of COVID-19. But I just want to counsel all of the other oversight committee members. I view this as a very tight margin that the district is working in. And so I'm going to compliment the school district in terms of the concept of reducing the amount of indebtedness that there would be for Jackson and using some of the reserves as that we've been talking about, because that to me, in terms of where you're prospectively looking at on a coverage basis, and it shows in the minutes because Sue asked, in my opinion, what I thought an appropriate coverage level would be, given the variability that one can have in sales tax revenue, especially such in certain times. So I just want to put that word of caution out, but I like the fact that you're looking at having less issuance on the next bond, just because there is so much uncertainty. I'll give you guys an example. I serve on the Cedar Rapids School Foundation, which all we get is contributions from individuals and companies. And we already are seeing some of our, I won't name names, but some of our key contributors are either reducing or completely eliminating what they're going to be contributing in our fiscal calendar year, which coincides with the school districts. And so, we're working very closely on what revenue we have to spend. And I know that's not directly related to sales tax, but I'm telling you that we have some very long-standing groups that have made commitments to us. But they're saying that COVID-19 obligations that they have, they will not be funding us this year. So I just want to give everybody a word of caution. We got to do the right thing. We need to make these expenditures, but in my opinion, that we're in such uncharted water as it relates to what the unemployment levels are, what spending will be. It could be that spending levels actually end up being higher on tax items. So we just don't have enough information. So I want to compliment him on his analysis. I want to compliment Dave and the district that you're doing the right thing of, we need to issue some more bonds, but doing it in a very prudent way that I support that. A question that I have for Tim, it was one I asked Dave last time. So in terms of the debt coverage covenant, what's the penalty to the district if we violate that?
Great question, and I need to clarify something that I may have either said wrong or left you with the wrong impression. So the coverage number, that 120% or 125%, is not a contractual obligation of the district to maintain annually. So let's say enrollment, let's say we levered all the way up to 120%, and then enrollment declined a couple hundred kids and we dropped down to 1.18, 118%. There would not be a penalty, it would not be an event of default. The 120% is solely a restriction put in place to limit the ability to sell additional debt at a later date. That's all it does. There is no contractual nature of it in terms of an annual testing.
Would there be the potential on the existing bonds or new issuance of bonds where we'd get a bond downgrade.
Yeah, it seems a reasonable assumption that if we're wandering south of, below 1.2 times coverage, that the rating could be at risk.
And that, guys, would, in my opinion, my professional opinion, given that I'm in the investments area big on, that would be horrific outcome. We've got to stay away from any prospect of a bond rating downgrade. Cost of funds would go up, and it's not where we want to go. So that's why I keep on obsessing about these coverage ratios and the amount of the bonds. And while we're just in an oversight, I just want to give strong counsel to everybody that we need to. Where I take comfort is the fact that we do have contractually a long tail revenue stream with the penny tax. So that's wonderful news for us, and the district is being responsible. But we've got to be extremely careful that we don't breach a covenant. I'm glad to hear it's not a monetary penalty for the existing bonds, but it's like the death kiss of getting a bond downgrade, in my opinion.
And I'm not going to try and talk you out of your opinion or talk you into it. I agree and understand your concern. Just to remind everybody, right now, the way the district spends cash for non-bond related costs out of the save, that $3.5 million they spend every year, as a practical reality, it is that cash that creates the cushion with respect to the bonds. Now, I would then turn around and say, yeah, but if revenues decline, that cash is going to be at risk that it can't be spent, and that puts the district's PEPL or operational funds at risk. And so, Lindsay, back to your point is let's be careful and cautious here, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And just I know one of the additional topics we're going to be talking about is the computer rollout, which is absolutely mission critical for the students to get education this year, and that's a really good thing that we have the type of flexibility that we have. But the school district is accelerating the cost to incur. It's the right thing to do, so there's no objection on my part. But I just want people to know that there really isn't a big buffer or a cushion, in my opinion. A year from now, I think we will know so much and we'll be good stewards again. But I think, Tim Piper, you're giving good counsel. The school district, Dave, you guys are all doing a very responsible things, which gets back to the point when I heard the fact that you're going to reduce the amount of the issuance for Jackson, that will lower the amount of debt. And then I like the fact that what Tim was saying, like, okay, we can still go back at a later point in time as it relates to the $65 million refinance, if we so need to in the future, if there's interest rate savings at that time. So there's just, for oversight purposes, there's a lot more volatility that I see in these financial numbers than the entire time that I've been on this oversight since it was created in the silo tax, with the penny tax was initiated. So I just want to give that counsel that we need to be very cautious in our oversight role. But I'm really supportive of what the district is doing. But I don't want any of the other committee members to have any false sense of security to think that there's more of a cushion than there is, because it isn't there. So that, I think, is all of the items that I had. And again, that's why I think it's so important that the school districts go back and look at eliminating that reserve for right now, so that for the entire amount of it, and that just gives more flexibility for the school district to make the necessary expenditures to operate the schools in a safe and sound manner and meet our debt obligations, as opposed to just having it sit off on the side for something that may or may not happen in the future. And I'm not smart enough to know if it will, but it's not immediate CapEx. So that's why I don't support just holding it out there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. So, does anybody else have any other questions, comments while Tim is with us still?
I do have one. If you were to issue the bonds today, what do you think the coupon, what would it go off at?
So if we were doing this today, I think the bond coupon, so remember, these are federally exempt but subject to state of Iowa income taxes. So I would expect the bond coupon would be a 4, and they would be priced to yield an average rate in the 270 range with a, well, the max is a 2050 payoff. So that'd be 30 years. Dave and I have discussed trying to shorten up from 30 to something less than that, but let's assume that it was a 30-year issue, probably a 4 coupon to yield about a 270.
So what's it price off of?
MMD is typically how it prices, and unlike in the taxable market where you'd price off of like a 10 or a 30-year treasury, MMD has a spot rate for every single year. So each year would have its own, if you will, its own spread, its own rate.
So it's kind of comparing that to like a sinking fund factor?
It has some similarities to it, yeah. And Lindsay, I know you're interested in this. I'd be glad to share with Dave, and he can get to you actual MMD and spread so you could see the numbers if you'd like.
So just to ask the general question, why is it higher than the current borrowing rate at 2.3?
Right now, most institutional buyers, and that's who would be buying this type of issue, would prefer to buy a bond that has a coupon higher than the yield, and they'll pay a price higher than par. And that gives them protection in the event that the school district were to call the bond. So let's say we would preserve the right to prepay the bond in 2029 or 2030, something like that. That gives the investors the assumption that they will get called out in 2029, and so what they're saying in simple English is, okay, I'll buy a 10-year bond at a 277. But if the district leaves the bond outstanding, let's say till its final maturity, that 277 is not a terribly attractive rate. And so I need a higher coupon to give me downside protection. If the district does not call the bond early, that rate works its way up, and we call it a kick, but the rate kicks up over time. And I haven't calculated the kick, but it would probably be another 50 basis points higher if the bond went to its final maturity, which would then reward the investor for, being stuck with a 30-year bond.
Tim's minutes in the last meeting, I asked a question about the callability of the bonds, if there was any prepayment premium, and the answer from Dave was no. This sounds like there is a prepayment premium.
So the existing bonds, there are 4 outstanding existing bonds. One is not callable at all. The other 3 are callable without penalty. However, they're callable at different dates, and 2 are actually currently callable. And the third one is callable here in 5 years. So I wouldn't couch this as a penalty to call. I understand why you say that. I would couch it more as a penalty to not call. The kick kicks in, if you will, and starts paying the investor in a better interest rate after the call date.
The technical point, Tim,
Yeah,
that in its point of law, it's not a penalty, it's a premium.
understood. Yeah.
So don't use the word penalty. And that should not be in the minutes. It's a prepayment premium, not a penalty. Okay. I think that, isn't it, Tim, true that in the most recent issuance that one of the local banks was more aggressive because it met some type of, and obviously I don't work at a bank, I work at a life insurance company, that there was some additional motive for them to be able to buy the bond at a more aggressive, more attractive for all parties.
Yeah, you have a good memory. That was 8 years ago, however, and we've actually refinanced that bond since then. But yes, if we can get an issue to stay 10 million or smaller, then there is a what we call bank eligibility, and certain banks that are not partnerships get a tax credit to buy a bank eligible bond, and they will typically pass that on to the borrower, the school district, in the form of a lower rate than others would charge. Right now, that eligibility is worth, depending on where you are on the yield curve, somewhere between 30 and 50 basis points. So where we can get it, we certainly try and pick that up.
Can we break this issuance into bite sizes to try to pick that up?
Yep, and that's exactly what we did back in the one you were remembering from 11 and 12. We broke one piece, and these are calendar year rules, so we would break the piece into like a December or January component and close one of them so that we protect BQ. Yes. And
in this spreadsheet, it's too tiny for me to read, Dave. So I'm just going to ask a question about the what type of interest expense assumptions are in the spreadsheet in terms of what rate?
Debt?
Yeah, for the debt.
For debt, what's in here is what is actually our debt payments. Our true debt payments are built in this. I don't have anything built in this for Jackson at this point in time. That's
okay.
Tim's analysis when he pulls things together and tries to make some projections. That's when that kind of filters into it.
Yeah, and actually, I'm about halfway done doing my updates in this file, which is Dave and I, and before Dave, Steve and I shared these files back and forth, worked in them together. But I'm about halfway done, and when I'm done, one of the things that will be built in is the estimate for the Jackson debt.
And so, Dave, what are you thinking in terms of dollar amount for the Jackson debt instead of the $25,750,000 based upon what we were talking about today?
I'm thinking anywhere from 17 to 18 million, but that gives us we gotta make sure that we hold back 4 to 6 million to make sure that we have enough money of our fund balance to deal with our needs for the following year. So, but once we close out this year, we'll have a better feel for once we're closed out this year, what that will.
So timing wise, that for the oversight committee, Dave and Tim, when do you think you're going to have some more kind of analysis for us to be able to be aware of?
I don't think you can.
September?
I'm hoping that comes up. I'm
Tim?
at the September meeting?
Yeah, I agree, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, then I would propose that get added to the agenda for September, and we can talk more about it then. And I would encourage the school district to have Piper send out information well in advance of the meeting, so that I have a chance to look at it to the extent I can, and other oversight members have the time also.
When would the September meeting be? That's the question. Is it the like first?
Yep, it would be following our normal meeting schedule. It would be September 7th.
That might be a little early. Do you think? I mean, that might be October.
That's actually a holiday too.
Okay, yeah.
That's true.
I would propose and have it be the October. I don't want to rush you guys.
Yeah.
But I really do want to. I want to look this over very, very carefully. And I'm not saying that the school district is not. The school district is doing the right thing, and they're being very careful. But we're in uncharted times like I've never experienced in the 36 years I've been at Aegon.
I want to make sure that we have the numbers from the state, and for some reason, if they got delayed a little bit, we want to make sure we have enough time to react to the numbers and get everything built out. So,
and Tim, is there anything more that you would be able to do because you work on these all of the time and we don't, that by some additional discussions with the state of what their projections are for the next year and why they've projected them the way they have, and then whenever we have this next round, Dave, I'd like Tim to be able to answer some really technical types of questions.
Yeah. So the state is unwilling to give us any kind of advanced information. Everybody gets it at the same time. We do quite a bit of, once we get the numbers, we cross-check it ourselves and then go back to the state to verify our calculations against theirs. So we don't ask them, what are yours? We do ours first. So we will have all of that done within a few days of the state having the numbers out in August. And then, yes, we will have confirmed with the state our assumption, and we'll be able to share that with the committee. Dave Nicholson, I would suggest if we could meet instead of obviously the 7th, a week or maybe 2 later, we probably ought not wait until October if we do need to do something bond-wise before December 1.
Yeah.
Starting in October would be really moving along pretty quick.
Okay. Well, we can do a September meeting if we can.
Yeah, this to me is really, really important because it's a large dollar amount, got a long tail on it. And the great news to the other committee members that, in my opinion, that we have a very accommodative Federal Reserve, and relative to the prospect of fiscal policy and interest rates. So we're not, for the foreseeable future, there's not a lot of volatility or risk. And so it's very prudent what the school district is doing. But, I do understand that from what Piper's saying, that it's a long lead item. So we don't want to do anything that, from an oversight standpoint, that holds up the school district. Those would be the observations I have.
Okay.
Just a quick reminder to everybody. I know Justin probably needs to jump off, and Justin, you can tell me 15, 20 minutes. We have a school board meeting tonight, so you probably need to get through the rest of the agenda rather quickly to stay on schedule for that.
So we were still just basically on the financials there, right? Is what I'm.
Yep.
Okay, so are we gonna, let's go ahead and go to the computer rollout, or we got any more questions for Dave on the financials? All right, let's go with computer rollout update really quick.
All right. I know you can't really see this very closely, but this line here, I don't know if you can see my cursor mover circling, but there's in FY20, we had $4.1 million in technology coming out of SAVE. That money right there, that included a carryover, and the year before was a carryover. But moving forward, the allocation that we have in SAVE for technology is $2.6 million. And so, end of this year, and including the next year, we are, moving ahead with our one-on-one initiative. It was the middle school devices had already been ordered prior to COVID, and those units are on site. Okay, those units are on site, and so then we had to go order the one-to-one devices for elementary schools. And we were planning on doing, our plan was never to do a one-to-one at elementary. Our plan was to do a 2-to-1. But because of COVID, we ramped that up to 1-to-1. And so at our June board meeting, the board approved, purchasing 6,100 units Dell Chromebooks at $265 a pop. And that was $1.6 million for the Dell Chromebooks that we ordered. And then we also ordered the cases for those, which added another $104,000, almost $105,000 for those cases. Because those computers were going home, so we do need cases for those. And that was to support the rollout for our 1st through 5th grade students. Pre-K through kindergarten will be using iPads. And so we did also go out and bid out iPads and to purchase those. And we're purchasing 2,100 iPads, and that's a total of $617,000 for iPads. And so on top of that, we also purchased what is called a Go Guardian. It's a software that controls, helps the ability to control screens for presenting materials and monitoring kids' work. That's something that we also purchased to help with the virtual learning. And we also purchased 1,500 hotspots. Okay. So the 1,500 hotspots were purchased from T-Mobile, and that was $360,000 for 1 year's contract for this hotspot, and that's $20 a month. And we had to do a contract for an entire year. We couldn't do a month-to-month contract. So we have a contract, and that's $360,000 is going to come out of our CARES Act money. But the remaining expenditures, except we are looking at, for our Chromebooks, we had to incur some additional expense to expedite shipping. And so the additional expenses for shipping, that will be ran in through the CARES Act as well. But the costs that we have here that I just shared with you, all of those expenses are going to come out of the SAVE funding that we have here, and that we do have the balance there to be able to absorb those expenses. So that's why I'm saying, depending on where we end up this year, I want to know what we have available to be able to use for the Jackson. But because we are taking a big chunk out of that, and we are not borrowing any funds to do that. That's a quick computer rollout update.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. John, you got something quick on the new elementary?
Yeah, foundations are still rolling. Building pads obviously built now that they got foundations going. Block walls have started last Wednesday. So it's moving along. They're right on schedule. Seedorf Masonry, like I said, started Wednesday. Here in probably the next week, they'll probably have at least 10 block layers on site. They plan on maxing out around 20 to 25 once they get to a point they have enough walls up and going. Plumbing underground is taking place. And obviously with the block walls going in, wall roughing, has started. That's really the point we're at right now. We've received 2 caps. We're at $720,000 has been paid to Garling to date on an original contract sum of $21 million. So if my math is anywhere near correct, roughly 3%'s been paid out to date. We don't have any change orders as of yet. There were some code corrections they issued an ITC on, so I know we'll have at least a change order on that, but that's still being processed. So far everything's going as planned, going well.
Was there, hey John, was there a subcontractor that had to be changed, anything, or in there?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay.
No, I know there's.
Hey, John, can you, go ahead, John.
I know Garling they're still determining a couple items if they're going to self-perform or if they're going to hire a sub or not. But as far as the list that I sent you, Pat, I know that's accurate.
Okay, thanks, John.
Yep.
John, can you send photos out periodically to the group? Progress photos?
Yep, sure can.
It's gonna go through. So, okay.
Is there any
Okay,
other questions for John about the updates on the building? So, did we decide on a meeting date then, guys and gals?
Do we want to meet in August or do we want to wait until we have financial information? I would almost vote we wait until just September, and we can talk about financials then, and then maybe October might be a good time to go out and see the building. I think by that point in time there'll be something to see more than there'll be more than just concrete and walls to take a look at.
Right on. I would recommend that myself too. How does everybody else feel about that?
I agree that we wait until October, September timeframe.
Would that be early October?
Yes.
Meeting?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So when are we looking at September then? 10th?
Let me take a look at, I just want to pull up the board calendar to try to not overlap if we don't need to.
Because I'm unavailable the 10th myself. I'd much rather be at the meeting instead of having a colonoscopy. So.
Give me just one
I
second.
think that falls in the category of TMI there, Pat.
I'm sorry.
What if we do September 21st? There's a board meeting on the 14th and the 28th, and the 7th is Labor Day. So September 21st. I'm seeing
that would work for me.
Okay.
And then what are you talking in October then? A quick turnaround of a couple weeks after that then?
Yeah, I think so. And we can kind of have 2 different agendas. The one will be based on financials, and then the one on October will be more of a site visit and a very limited agenda, I guess.
If you could have Tracy send out invites and everything, that'd be great.
Yep, no problem.
Can we have that meeting start at 5?
Both of them, or which one?
That's September, if you're saying September 21st.
Yep, that's fine.
I've got business schedule conflicts before 5, but at 5 I'm open. Would you be able to is Tim available for that meeting?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's still on. I don't see him, but I will reach out to him.
Because I'd like to have him at that. It was of enormous value, Dave. I don't expect you to have the level of information that Tim does, and he's getting paid in these bond issuances. So the one qualifier I'd have is the 21st only works if he's available, because otherwise I don't think we have the right subject matter expert.
Yep, we'll see what Dave
right now.
I'm not available after 5 o'clock on that day, though. I don't know if that'll be a problem or not. If everybody should.
Yeah, we'll check and see, Frank. If we have our quorum, then we'll be fine. If not, we'll shoot out an email and find an alternative date.
Okay.
And same thing if sorry, his name's escaping my head. If he's not available, if Tim's not available, we'll send out an email and get a different date together.
Okay.
So, go ahead, John.
Justin, are you still on?
Yes, I am. That 21st will work out fine.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else?
I have nothing else myself. No comments or recommendations for anything else. But how about anybody else? Lindsay, you got anything you want to wrap up?
Nope. Nothing.
Anybody else? Sue? Frank?
Nope.
Nope.
No,
Sounds like we're gonna.
I just got confirmation Tim is available on the 21st.
Perfect.
Good.
Justin, you
We'll
can.
look for the
Justin,
email.
you can end. Justin, can you end our YouTube? I just got one personal note real quick for the group after the meeting's over.
Hold on 1 second, and I will switch you out, and you should be okay. Once you say the meeting is, well, actually, we're going to the slate, and it should be dark.